Well, an official good morning to you all. And like I said, thank you so much for your time. I'm sure Friday, I don't know what your day holds, but no doubt it's been a week of spinning plates and grappling with all manner of things on your to-do list. But we're really grateful for your time. I'm really glad to have you with us this morning. My name's Rachel Heffer. I work for the Evangelical Alliance as Head of Mission. And I'm hosting this morning along with Rachel Jordan Wolfe, who you'll hopefully see on your screen as well. Rachel's the Assistant Director of Hope Together. And we worked in partnership on this Talking Toddlers research. Massive welcome to some of you who might have joined us back in June when we had the first of these Talking Toddlers webinars. We had some time together in June looking at the launch of the research which had come out in late May. So a huge welcome to those of you who might have joined us for that, but an even bigger welcome maybe to those of you who joined us for the first time this morning. Our hope for this sort of hour and a half together is that more than anything, I guess, we really hope that it's of great encouragement to you. Whatever your context, whatever your background, whatever you're doing at the moment with regards to your outreach missionally to families of under fives, or whether for so many of us, it feels like actually in this COVID crazy world that we're living in, that potentially it's a bit of a stalemate, and actually there's lots of questions, a changing landscape around us, as we know, week in, week out. And so many of us are grappling with actually what is possible, what the guidelines say, what we can do, what others are doing, and grappling with our own questions or frustrations or vision and hope sort of within the midst of that. So what we've got lined up really for you in the next hour and a half, hopefully will not only encourage you, but help us to sort of think through, grapple with some of the research, but actually also really practically look at some of the guidelines and the stories that others will share, but help to tease out as well some of your questions and your experiences. So in a few minutes time, we're going to have a look at just a summary of the Talking Toddlers research, which hopefully will either be new news to you and give you a good overview, or for those of you who have engaged with it already, it'll be a good recap and a good reminder to set the context for our discussions. We've got various people coming to help us look at various different angles of either what's happened during lockdown, reaching out to families with under 5-year-olds, what people are doing now and how people are thinking about things from a perspective of a church leader as well as a group leader. And we've got various different people coming on to interject with different stories and experiences, which we'll introduce as time goes on. We'll also be looking at some of the government guidelines and some of the aspects around that too. So hopefully it'll be a rich and fruitful and useful time for you. But like I said, we've been thrilled to work on this in partnership, myself and Rachel from the EA and from Hope. And we'd love to point you to the two websites as well, EA website and Hope Together website off the back of this, because a recording of this will go live on the website. There's also links to the research. And indeed, do email us, Steph, who you'll see on screen, who you hopefully booked in through. If you've got any feedback at the end, then do let us know. And indeed, any other aspects that come up during this session that maybe we haven't touched on as fully as you might like, do let us know what those are. We'd love to pick up on those in a future gathering. But before we go any further, why don't we just pray at the start of this Friday and commit our time to the Lord, and then we'll plough on with some more practical stuff. So, Lord, we just bring ourselves to you at the start of this Friday. Pray, Jesus, that you would be with us. I pray that you would give us focus at the end of, as we said, no doubt another busy week. I just want to read a couple of verses from Psalm 121 that just says, I look up to the mountains. Does my help come from there? My help comes from the Lord who made heaven and earth. He will not let you stumble. The one who watches over you does not slumber. Indeed, he who watches over Israel never slumbers or sleeps. The Lord himself watches over you and all of us. The Lord stands beside you as your protective shade. The sun will not harm you by day, nor the moon at night. The Lord keeps you from all harm, and he watches over your life. The Lord keeps watch over you as you come and go, both now and forever. Lord, we just pray at the start of our time together. Lord, we just acknowledge that this is a really challenging season for all of us. and devastating for so many around the world. Lord, we just thank you that those words of Psalm 121 just remind us that in the midst of all that is changing, all that takes us on this roller coaster of a journey in coronavirus world that we live in, thank you, Lord, that you never slumber or sleep, and that your protective shade is over us by day and by night. Lord, we just commit our time to you now. Pray, Lord, it would be fruitful, it would be encouraging, it would be helpful, that we'd learn from each other, learn from people's experiences and have time to share together. Just be with us, Lord, and pray that as we listen, as we share, would you just be brewing in us just the thoughts, the vision, the encouragements that you would have us know for our individual contexts, churches, toddler groups, messy churches, wherever we're coming from. We just pray you would help fuel our thinking, so that we would do everything out of glory and honour to you, to see your son Jesus made known to those around us. So just bring our time to you. Pray you'd be with us in it. In Jesus' name, amen. Amen. Great. Well, on that note, I'm going to hand over to Rachel, as I said, of Hope Together, and Rachel's going to lead us into looking at some of the research.
Morning. What I thought I would do is actually, rather than do it again live, I just show you a tiny clip of when I've already presented the summary, especially for those of you who haven't yet maybe seen the research. This might be your first time. So 7 minutes. Put on your safety belts. We'll whistle through the main key points of the Talking Toddler research, so it's fresh in our minds as we come into the rest of this webinar. Hello, I'm Dr. Rachel Jordan-Wolfe. I'm the Assistant Director of Hope Together, and I'm here to share with you some amazing research called Talking Toddlers. It's about parents of children aged 0 to 4 and their engagement with the church. We've done this in partnership, Hope, the Evangelical Alliance and the Church of England. And we're so excited about it because we think it's strategic for church growth in the UK. Why have we done this research? We've done it because, well, you might have heard of something called Talking Jesus. That was research that we looked at in 2015. We followed that with Mapping Practicing Christians in 2017. And it was in that piece of research that we discovered this amazing statistic. 40% of practicing Christians, I'll just define them for you. They are Christians who are regularly attend or are part of a worshipping community at least once a month, and who read their Bibles and who pray or listen to the Bible and pray at least weekly. Well, we discovered when we asked this group of people at what age did they come to faith, that 40% of them said it was under the age of 5. They said it was when they were 0 to 4. 40% of practicing Christians said they came to faith when they were aged 0 to 4. Well, what's going on there? How exciting is that? What an incredible impact we're having on a really young generation. In fact, it was the generation that we were having the biggest impact on. We were reaching more people under the age of 5 than any other generation. And we wanted to know and think about what would it take to reach all of those under the age of 5. If we could reach everybody under that age bracket in our nation, we could turn around and look at church growth in an extraordinary way. If they're the age bracket that are so open, how could we actually meet them? Well, the key is obviously going to be through their parents and their families. So this is how this research started. We went to an amazing company called Comrade Savanta who helped us with this. And we decided to do some research. We looked at 1,182 parents of children under the age of 5. We did this on an online survey that they answered the questions, and we did it at the beginning of 2020 in February. We looked specifically at 3 groups. We looked at the fringe parents. They were the ones who we really wanted to know about. Those who are in contact with us as church, but would not meet perhaps all of those parameters of a practicing Christian. We looked at those who are currently unreached. So how many of these parents of 0 to 4s do we have who we've actually not got any contact with? And then we looked at this amazing thing, if you like, our team. That's the active Christians, the parents of under 5s who are actually already part, if you like, of the church and the church life, who might be seen as the team that we could skill up even more to reach the others. What did we discover? Well, it's amazing. We discovered that 12% of the parents of the under 5s are actually
practicing and active Christians. This is a bigger segment than you would expect, than we expected. If you like, the whole population, 6% of the whole population are active or practicing Christians. So in this group, it's way more. In fact, we've got double the team than we've got in across the whole of the population. So that is an amazing start. Then we discovered this: 62% of the parents of the under 5s are actually already in contact with the church in the UK. That is staggering. That adds up to an incredible 74% of parents with children under the age of 5 who we are in contact with. That's an amazing opportunity. In fact, it was only 25% of that group of the parents of the under 5s who we don't have contact with. So we wanted to find out more. What and how are they in contact with us? Well, more than 8 in 10 fringe parents say that their children attend a regular activity in the past 12 months in our churches. That's incredible. That's 86% who are regularly in contact with us. In fact, most people attended at least 2.4. That was the average number of attendances that these parents and their children made into our different church activities. You can see here there's a whole list, and we've got so much more detail in this research than I've got time for now. But we'd love you to come and dig deeper. And if you look at the website, you'll be able to do a bit more digging or find out where and how you can do that. But the big message is we have this incredible group of fringe parents. They are majority in regular contact with us as the church. And that is staggeringly good news. Well, we asked them, why did they come along? What were the big things that brought them into contact with us? Why were they there? The number one thing is they thought their children would enjoy it. Great news. And actually, let's face it, if their children weren't enjoying it, I guess they wouldn't come back. So that's got to be good news, that the church is doing something that they see as really positive for their children. And they wanted their children to make friends. They wanted their children to learn good values. So we know when we're talking to people about what we put on as church, that these are the things, these are the draws that help them to bring their children along. And then we ask them a fantastically important question. Why were they there? How did they find out about it? Well, just like our Talking Jesus research that we did early on, we discovered that word of mouth was so important. Everything relies on us as Christians to tell other people. It hasn't changed from the commission that Jesus gave us. And it's exactly the same. The majority, the vast majority of those parents who were in our fringe category, who were coming on regularly to the church, were coming because somebody invited them. It was word of mouth. 73% said word of mouth was the key reason they came. And so we need to keep on giving that confidence to our active Christian parents to keep inviting those other parents who are both fringe and those who aren't regular to come to more things if they're in the fringe, so they might go deeper and learn more. And if they're in the Unreached group, to come for the first time. Really exciting. Well, we also discovered, were they welcomed? Did they really feel welcome by the church when they came? And it's amazing, 84% of the parents of this fringe category said that they felt welcome when they came along to us as a church. So that's just fantastic good news. Well done, church, for welcoming this generation and their parents into us to come and meet us and to come be part of our church life. That is fantastically good news. And we just want to say a massive well done. And now one of the most exciting things to ask, have the parents, because they've been there with their children, begun to explore their own beliefs? 55% of our fringe parents said that because they had come along with their children to these activities and been touched by the church life, they had begun to explore their own beliefs. That is such an open door for us as a missionary church to engage with them and help them on that journey, to explore their own belief and to help their children as their children come further into belief. Because actually 55% wanted to help their children. They came because they wanted their children to know Bible stories. And 54% wanted their children to be able to explore religious beliefs. We as a church have an incredible opportunity to both reach that generation of children and their parents. It's staggering. It's such an open door for us. What about the group who are currently unreached? How did this research tell us about them? Well, Some of them had been invited, but they told us the main reason they couldn't come were things like just, it was inconvenient. They were really like, they weren't big reasons why they couldn't, they're big reasons why they couldn't come, but they weren't reasons that we couldn't change. Things like just a bad time. So we might want to try and work out with them better times at which to put things on so that they might come along. So they didn't have a real objection, it was more that the time was just unsuitable. We found out that, of course, many of these parents do work as well. There's a lot of working parents in this age bracket. And so we need to really think about what we do and when we do it to reach the most parents and their children of the under 5s. We also discovered that 35% of these unreached parents said they'd like to be invited to these activities, especially by somebody that they knew. So we go right back to the reason why the fringe parents were there in the first place. Someone invited them. And it's amazing, 35% of those who are currently unreached are waiting for us to invite them along to something. Incredibly good news. So let's find out a little bit more about our team. What about the active Christian parents? Well, actually, they said 9 in 10 active Christian parents said they have regular contact with these unreached parents. And the majority of them had had opportunities to talk to them or to invite them along to something that the church was doing. So we want to say it's amazing. We've got a really active team. And if we work together, just think about how incredible this opportunity could be. So we found out some amazing key things, that we have this incredible group of fringe parents of the under 5s. We've got this staggeringly excellent sized team who are already active, and we want to just put more energy and more enthusiasm behind them. We want to take that fringe group deeper on in their journey of faith, because that's really important for them to explore their faith, and we want to see that, if you like, really work hard on that pipeline of how that might happen. And we want to reach more of those that are currently unreached, because it's such an opportunity. We could do this together. We could do it across a nation. We could reach a generation in an incredible way if we did this together. So particularly if you're a church leader listening to this, what are you going to do to resource the reaching of this generation? What are you going to do strategically to think more about this, to bring it into the centre of your church's life and the centre of our church's strategy, so that together we can reach a generation? Thank you so much for listening. That's been Talking Toddlers, and we'd love you to just look at the website, find out more about how you can get engaged and what other resources we have for you to help you with this incredible task as we reach a generation and their parents with the good news and love of Jesus.
Fabulous. Thanks so much for watching that catch up. There is a report that you can get all the statistics online on both the EA's website and the Hope Together's website. So if you were scribbling frantically trying to catch that, and that film is up as well. So you can either watch the film where hopefully it'll be a bit clearer. As I was watching it was a bit blurry. My internet wasn't quite coping with the full capacity of that, so it didn't look very Netflix here. So if you want to watch it in crystal clear, do go online again and watch it, and you can get a report that we've written which has all those statistics for you. And we're just going to go into breakout groups now.
It'd be great to hear a few snippets of feedback. So for those of you who were allocated in your groups to do that,
we had 5 of us from all sorts of different situations, middle of the road, C of E, house church with pioneer links, all sorts of free churches as well. And but everybody was sharing what's been difficult recently: premises not being available, the fact that things had been difficult beforehand anyway, and then COVID made it worse. And so we were ending by saying, well, what might have worked best? And there were some really good things that people have been doing that looked useful. A 4 o'clock church, which looked like messy church with lots and lots of activities for the children. A link with an independent lady who offered a sort of birthing hub group, which could be used as a run-up to baptism. With midwives, we talked about lack of antenatal groupings. We talked about the value of seeing people at school gates but not be able to grin at them because we're wearing masks. Yeah, that sort of thing.
Yeah. Brilliant. Yeah, thanks for flagging that. Some of the complexities that you face, I'm sure, echoed by other people. Yes, thanks so much.
Good morning, everybody. Yeah, within our group, we were talking really around obviously some of our obvious challenges at the minute in terms of working with young people and getting them together, and our different obviously experiences of church in terms of the research and working with parents. I think the research struck me quite a bit in relation to that it is a very positive piece of research, and I think the word intentional came up quite a bit in our conversations in terms of our intentional approaches to parents around inviting them to different things and different opportunities to obviously link with them. I think within the group we all had different experiences, obviously, of working with under fours in relation to some of the parent and toddler groups that are in operation and other things as well. And some of that led to sort of like that some of our groups maybe have started off as with the best intentions, but they've drifted off into sort of like a general parent and toddler group without necessarily having sort of like a mission intent behind it in terms of actually some level of faith development and encouraging Bible stories, etc. I think it was one of our group members. I think it was Rachel was actually saying that one of the groups fell into that sort of like trap in a sense, and then she got involved to actually give it a bit more shape and reshape it to actually give it a bit more of a faith-based intentional element within the work, and that's been really positive as well. But I think it's just encouraging to see, obviously, in spite of our current challenges, how we are still doing our best and thinking creative ways of still working with parents and toddlers.
Brilliant. Thanks so much, Simon. Yeah, and certainly we echoed that some of the research showed that actually where the 74% of all adults with children under 5 who are connecting with us, some of the research showed that actually there was a high expectation that if they were meeting in a church context, then they fully expected that we would talk about Bible stories, talk about Jesus, talk about the gospel. So again, but it takes a level of braveness, as we said, to step out and to enhance that through our group. So thanks, Simon, for sharing that. Much appreciated. Can I come to Alison Kedity, who kindly said that she could feedback for group 7?
Morning.
Good morning.
So our group, there were 4 of us, and we were split half and half between who had already heard the research and who it was fresh for. So for the people who it was fresh for, the things that kind of immediately struck them, apart from the fact that there was just a lot there, was it was overall incredibly encouraging for us in ministry with 0 to 4s, and particularly encouraging thinking about the level of impact that we can have, and also the fact that spoken invitation was really important was another factor that stood out. Then for those of us who'd heard the research before and had a chance to work with it a little bit, there was definitely a feeling that having a full report available on the website and being able to put that under someone's nose, maybe clergy or higher up, was really helpful, because it backs up what we do and it gives us a bit of support for some momentum in what we're trying to do. So that's really helpful. Thank you for that. And there was just kind of a lot of talk about where we're at and how this helps us, and thinking about in part some of our fringe parents, and the report does show how not all of the fringe parents who are attending are necessarily middle class, which there might be perhaps more middle class attendees on a Sunday morning than there are a midweek toddler group or a messy church. And how that means that we're doing something in our community groups that is reaching more people. And it's not necessarily that we're not talking about God, because obviously we are in messy church, and certainly in my toddler group, if you come along and you're in a church, you are getting a Bible story every week and a prayer. But it means that we're meeting them in perhaps maybe a more informal way, and that is appealing to a wider cross-section of our community, and that's a really positive thing.
Great. Thanks so much, Alison. Much appreciated. Like you said, I mean, lots in what you said there, but specifically, as we said, our hope has been with some of this research, as you pointed out, it really does point, doesn't it, to this being a demographic and a missional area within the church, where maybe the challenge to us as church members, church leaders, actually we really should be focusing on putting as much resource as we can into this area when we do engage with so many families within our community. And there's a challenge within that, I know, around finance and so on, but also so many opportunities, aren't there, for across all the age demographic as well, for people to get involved with our toddler groups or messy churches on all different levels. But yeah, thanks for that. Can I come next to Kirsty, and then I'll ask Mary Halls if she's available to just give us some feedback as well from what she's seeing in the Church of England. So Kirsty, could you feedback from your group? Thank you.
Sure. So we had a few more questions really about the research. I think most of us had not seen that before. So we were really struck by the 0 to 4s category of being the biggest age group that come to faith. So I think for us as a group of 4, we want to kind of look into that research a bit more, look at the terms and the definitions that were used in that research, because for us, most of the research that we'd seen historically were pointed to the 5 to 8s as being the largest age group to come to faith. So that would be something that we would look into more. I'd like to look at the research in more detail really, to get terms and definitions, because we were very surprised that 0 to 4s were the age group that was showing that they were the biggest age group to come to faith. So for us, it would look in more detail.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm sure if we had more time actually going around the wealth of experiences in the room, we'd find other people. I know I've heard anecdotally as well, people share stories themselves of having had very real encounters with Jesus, making decisions to become Christians at the age of 5 and under. So yeah, absolutely. But certainly there's more in the research about that. Thanks so much, Kirsty. Mary, I don't know if you're there. I'm just flicking through my screen. Mary, there she is. Hi, Mary. I wonder, Mary, well, maybe you can introduce yourself, but Mary oversees network of children and families, works across our Church of England network, those working in different dioceses. Mary, maybe you could just share again any particular snippets of the research which interest you and what you're seeing in terms of Church of England presence and pick up in the current season with regards to toddlers and groups. Over to you.
Thank you, Rachel. Yes, I'm Mary Halls. I take the national lead on children and youth for the Church of England. And about 4 years ago, we commissioned some research into toddler groups because partly I work with a group called 1277, which I hope most of you have heard of. It's an online Facebook group and organisation that brings together toddler group leaders to share ideas and to work together. And we had always known that there was a lot of work amongst toddler groups, but for churches it's hidden. And so we commissioned some research across England and Wales to find out what was going on, and the research that Rachel commissioned built on that and reinforced our findings that for many people they do date their journey of faith from before the age of 4, because they can't remember a time when they didn't know God because their families have been involved. What we're seeing, I think, across the Church of England at the moment is a huge frustration from toddler group leaders about not being able to get back to how things were. Lots of people have engaged online, some better than others, but what we're also hearing is that people aren't bothered about a perfect, slick online presentation. They and their children want to see your faces. They want to see the familiar. They want to see the people that play with the puppets, that sing them the songs, that tell them the stories. But many people now are wanting to get back together and are frustrated by the government guidance, which we need to follow if we're going to try and stem the increase of the virus. And so they're having to find creative ways of doing that. In the small group I was just in, we were hearing of people taking care packages, not for the children, but for the parents who are really struggling to know how to be with their 2 or 3 under 5-year-olds at home, when they're at home with them all the time and they haven't got the outlet of a toddler group. I don't think we're going to be able to get back to toddler groups as we knew them for quite some time. And so what I would be fascinated in the rest of this session is about hearing how people are doing and what they're planning to do in the future to help keep that connection, to help parents in their homes perhaps find simple ways of praying or telling the stories that they've already heard, of giving them the confidence to include this as part of their child's routine alongside all the other books and stories and TV that they will be seeing. How do we keep Jesus alive in a family that perhaps is quite fringe? The other area that I think toddler groups are amazing with, and which has truly suffered during lockdown, are new parents and supporting new parents. There's been a lot of research to show that the inability to make that wider connection with grandparents, and I think grandparents have suffered from not being able to hold a newborn in their arms for several months. That's going to affect the mental health and well-being of our parents and grandparents and carers. So I think one of the things as we go forward is to say, how do we show our care practically to parents as well as wanting to be with the children? Is that enough, Rachel? I could go on forever.
Absolutely.
I'll put in the chat the link to the research that we did, which has got some very practical outcomes for toddler groups, and I'll put the link to 1277 as well.
Brilliant. Yes, I think we've already had that put in the chat, so that's really helpful. But yeah, please do put that link, and yes, Daniel's put it there.
Oh, well done, Dan.
Really helpful. Thanks so much, Mary. And I'm sure many of us can resonate, whether you're a grandparent, whether you're a parent of toddlers. I totally echo, I think, from what I've been seeing and sensing as well, is that it's the faces, isn't it? It's the relational aspect of those who, for many mums, dads, carers, grandparents, would see at a toddler group or message church week in, week out. It's us that they miss. And so maybe in this online world and both in person, it's us needing to be creative to see how we can embrace that and meet those needs and reach people with the gospel as well. But thanks, Mary, for that. I'm going to move on to introduce Phil Knox, if that's all right, who's going to share a little bit of his experience with us as well. Phil is a colleague of mine, works at Evangelical Alliance. He's head of mission to young adults. Morning, Phil. You there?
Rachel, great to be with you.
Good morning. Yeah, good to see you. So, Phil, I've asked you particularly because you were involved during lockdown. Obviously, at this point in time, we're looking very much for some, it will be looking at how we can engage in the online presence, others looking at very much the in-person, what's feasible, what's practical. We're going to come on to some of those guidelines a little bit later on. You were involved during lockdown, though, with an organisation who I caught one, can't remember what night of the week it was, but as I looked on Facebook, I saw your face and your wife. You can tell us more about it, and your beautiful boys, but engaging in something online, which just caught me. I know it wasn't aimed at me, but it caught me because it was really creative. It was a time of day that worked. But tell us a bit more about how actually the online presence worked in terms of bedtime story world, and how you feel it was effective or not in reaching, again, parents with under fives when we were particularly in the online space, and looking at how effective that might still be now. What was your experience? What did you get up to?
Yeah, thank you. Great to be with you. So I guess as part of my kind of role at the Evangelical Alliance, now and again, you get invites into your inbox to come and speak somewhere or do something. And an organisation called Creation Fest, who run great weeks down in the Southwest, a big summer festival every summer, approached us and said, would I be up for, knowing the age of my children, doing a kind of bedtime story live via Facebook Live? And so it was when we were in full lockdown. And so the brief was basically to do a kind of bedtime story with our two boys, who are aged 7 and 1. And then do a kind of evening prayer time and lead that kind of online. And I guess the encouragement was that we had no idea how far it would go, and it seemed like a kind of bit of a crazy idea. Let's have a go. And yeah, so that was kind of, we simply did a bedtime Bible story, a bit of prayer, but then the live comments kind of started coming in of people watching all over the world, engaging with stuff, praying with us, submitting kind of prayer requests for what they were praying for. And engaging with that. And I think the encouragement was that it felt like Obviously the kind of the reach of that particular one was down to the reach of that particular organisation, but I think the creativity that the church has shown during this time has been astonishing, and it's been really encouraging to see different ways that the church have been trying to connect with people. And I guess for us the biggest encouragement really was how we think about modelling something of how we create connection with God during this time where we've been so isolated and can't connect via toddler group or church. And so that was the real encouragement. And off the back of that, I've heard stories of other families, even within our church, who saw it via Facebook Live, saying this is really blessed and helped us to think about how we do prayer and Bible story stuff as a family.
And Phil, just on that, so lots of people I've heard as well over the last few months have done Messy Church online, maybe an hour or so with some creative activities, have met with some of their families from toddler groups. What would you say if anyone was thinking, oh, I quite like that idea of the bedtime story? What was the advantage, would you say, of how that reached people, the time of day, the length of time that took? What would your advice be as to sort of what worked, but also how to even get started as to how people might use that in their church context or community?
Yeah, I think my encouragement would be just to have a go. I think this season that we're in, we can have a go, obviously within the legal limits, which Danny's going to talk about later, but let's have a go at a few things, certainly the online space. I think the great thing is, and I think it's been a good lesson for us as church, is it doesn't have to be slick. It doesn't have to be the most polished thing. And, when we were doing this thing on the Friday nights with our family, Joss, my 1-year-old, at one point ripped the page of the book. It was just there was a bit of chaos going on, as there is when you're working with toddlers. And I think my encouragement would be have a go, see what works, get some feedback, see what people engage with. And if something doesn't work, have another go at something else. And I think we're increasingly tolerant of the chaos that is the online world and finding moments of connection. But I think that's what I learned from it, and what I think as a church we're learning, that it doesn't always have to be the most slick performance. That actually, it's the important thing is the moment of connection, whatever that looks like.
Yeah, brilliant. Thanks, Phil. And it was a delight to see Joss rip the book as you were trying to read the page.
Don't work with children or animals, apparently. That's what they say, isn't it?
Absolutely. So I'm just going to ask you briefly to put a different hat on, because Phil, you also, so living in Quinton, I know in Birmingham, very immersed in your community, but also now wearing a church leader hat. Just from that perspective as a church leader at the moment, what are you doing with regards to toddler groups, children's ministry? Have you started up again? Are you pressing pause? Where are you up to in your thinking? And what are the challenges or encouragements, I guess, from your context that you could share with others?
Yeah, I think the first thing is that we are more acute. We're more aware ever of the need. I think parents are desperately seeking a need for connection and are really missing it. We have a toddler group at our church. We're on a council estate in Birmingham, and we have a Monday morning and a Friday morning toddler group usually, but we've just not been able to do that. And I think our food bank is overrun. We've been using created community hubs of homes in people in our community where the vulnerable have been able to go and get food, and those have been massively well used. I don't think the need has ever been higher, but at the same time, we just we haven't started back because we're trying to work out how to do that safely and within the guidelines. And it's all volunteers, and there's kind of real mix of views within the team as to kind of whether we think it's viable to kind of come back. I think what I would say is we've also found it really difficult on a Sunday. We do Zoom church, so we've not live streamed. We found it really important to be in the moment and to have a live church meeting. And we've actually grown the number of people who've come along to our church on a Sunday morning on Zoom has grown, which has been really exciting. But the engaging children and young people has been so difficult. But we've also not stopped trying. And so we said at the very start, we're going to have that first 15 minutes as we're just going to have a go at trying to engage all ages. And so sometimes we've had puppets, which has mixed reviews. Sometimes we've always had some kind of activity for families to do. As a family with young children, we go to our son's bedroom and the kids are kind of playing in the background, but we're trying to help them engage with different bits of the service. So what I'd say is it's really difficult doing kind of online church for younger generations, but please don't stop trying to try and engage them, and don't just give up and just try and do a kind of adult service. I think that would be my encouragement. I think what we've also discovered is we really think it's better doing a live Zoom moment than live streaming, and just kind of pre-recording something and put it out there. We found that's really worked and helped engage people. And I personally find it genuinely moving when I turn on a Sunday morning and see my whole church community there. That it's been a really difficult time for us as a family to see the church family there, even through a computer screen, has been really great. We found midweek groups for children have worked really well. So my 7-year-old goes to a growth group, which is led by incredible volunteers, and he's really engaged with that, and that's been amazing. So kind of keeping those children's groups through the week has been really good. I was the person in the group with Mary who talked about the kind of pamper bags. So we got local government funding to provide education bags, craft bags and pamper bags for people in our community, for the parents, and we've been able to bless people with that. That's been a crucial moment of connection. And I think the final encouragement I'd give you is that the fringe parents, Rachel in her presentation talks about the fringe parents, the importance of toddler groups to help those on the fringe. We've started an alpha course at our church on a Monday night, just online, literally turn up, meet, press the video, press play, and then discussing breakout rooms. We've had twice as many people on the alpha course than we've ever had on any alpha course at our church. And some of those on the course have come from the kind of toddler group that we've run. And we've just invited everyone, have a go, really low bar of commitment, turn your laptop on a Monday night and come and join us. And the stories that are coming out of that, of people encountering Jesus through alpha, through the various different pathways to that online course, have just been amazing. So have a go. Don't worry if you get it wrong. Thank you for all that you're doing, and God bless you this time.
Amazing. Thanks so much, Phil. Really good to hear of some of the, like I said, the creativity that we can harness through the online stuff, but also really helpful reflections of how you found it in a very real way, of both the struggles, the challenges, and some of the successes and the joys as well. But I think what comes overridingly from what you said, for me anyway, is just give it a go. Give it a go and see what works. People out there need us, don't they, to stick with them and to keep going. So thanks so much, Phil. I'm going to move on to introduce somebody else. You will have a chance to discuss all of this and to speak to folks again in just a few moments. But I'd love to introduce Adam to you. Morning, Adam. Can you hear me okay? You're there?
Can you hear me okay?
Hi, good to see you. Adam, we invited Adam. Adam runs a soft play centre called Treetops, which is not far from me here in just outside of Ely in Cambridgeshire. And the reason we asked Adam to come and show is because Adam has probably had, as you can imagine, running a soft play centre, an unenviable journey of looking at how to even open again, grapple with the guidelines, all of the sanitising, the hygiene and all of those complications, and to look at actually how we can put those sort of guidelines, towing the line, put them into practice and see people come back. So really thrilled to have you with us, Adam. Thanks so much for your time. Adam, I just thought, as you know, by asking you a few questions, it just might be helpful for people to hear of some of your really practical experiences of how to get going again, and sort of dissecting and digesting some of those guidelines. So we're not going to obviously bore people with all the intricacies of all that, which thankfully you've already got in your brain and you've done. But my first question to you, I guess, would be, you've heard and you've gleaned, you know, our context is obviously not necessarily a soft play centre, though I have heard of a couple of churches who have decided to run a soft play centre as a way of outreaching to their community and families of under fives. But for the majority of us, it's work in churches, toddler groups, messy churches, as you've heard. From what you've been able to engage with and draw out and grapple with, in terms of the real practicalities of hygiene and sanitizing and so on, what have your findings been? How have you been able to reopen? What would your advice be to folks as to what would be the must-haves or must-dos, if you like, when thinking about whether we can reopen or not?
Right. Well, yeah. Welcome, everybody. I would say the first practical thing to look at is a risk assessment. Don't be scared of the word risk assessment, but yeah, risk assessment. Even start it in your mind of what is in front of you. It's both a sort of a legal requirement and it gives you a structure to work on, and that's kind of how we worked it. We've got a lot of government guidelines in soft play. You're going to have probably very different guidelines, but ours are very, very strict. We weren't allowed to open until about a month ago, and we have to do it through our environmental health we had to get approval to open, etc. But yeah, the main thing is to get a risk assessment in place. So you think in your mind everything that you're going to need to open up, be it a church hall or a similar environment. So I basically just, I mean, the essential things are to then list in your risk assessment is what practically you can do. It doesn't have to be all fancy columns. It can be a straightforward, and just think what you need. Sanitization, track and trace, cleaning, social distancing. They're your big things, basically. Now, social distancing is maybe the one to start with. We were, how do we socially distance children was our biggest question. We don't. The children aren't. We had recommendations in place to keep them 1 metre apart. Doesn't work at all. So if there's anyone who's not happy with social distancing on children, not social distancing them, then we've found that they don't social distance. Children naturally want to play together, and that's what they're there for. But the important thing is adult social distancing. You can social distance the adults. I think with under 5, certainly here, they haven't social distanced, but the adults have been really good. So if you can keep the adults 2 metres apart, face masks, etc. What are the other important things? Airflow into a building. That's a big thing with us. It's very complicated in our industry. We have to give certain amounts of airflow. We have fancy heating systems, etc. But airflow, windows open, door open. Gets more difficult as it gets cold, but that is what they're looking for, an air change into the building. So that's something to always think about. Hand sanitisation, obviously quite important. As you come in, people to hand sanitise, and throughout the activities. We have hand sanitisers on the entry to every single place into our soft play and then into the play frame itself. The other thing we do and is essential is cleaning touch points. Now, obviously, you will have, excuse me, my phone's ringing. Yeah, so touch points anywhere into the building, door handles, etc. And then the other essential thing is toys, etc. So if you're bringing toys into the area, we had to cut down. So normally you would have soft play balls. That's not done anymore. So we have a very limited section with a few toys that can be cleaned in between sessions. So we clean every 2 hours. We clean every touch point in soft play. So we have sessions where we have a 2.5 hour session, and then we empty out, and then the staff clean, and then we open again, and then we do it again at the end of the day. We also do complicated things like fogging, but it's fairly specialist. I wouldn't even consider that. Or if you do, seek advice on that, because it's not as simple as it seems. So I mean, they're your basic essentials for opening up. So it's social distancing, it's hand sanitisation, it's airflow. As I say, don't expect children to socially distance, because it is virtually impossible, as we've found. So if we say to our parents, if you're not happy with your children not social distancing, then basically it's probably not the place for you yet. But obviously they're in schools, etc. They are in these bubbles. They are getting together there. So yeah, but that's basically my essentials for opening up, so to speak.
Really helpful, Adam. Thank you. Yeah, because in a few moments we'll hear from Danny as well about the government guidelines, which is obviously a big broader level, but actually to think of actually what does it look like when it really hits the ground. That's some really helpful. So I'm sure there'll be lots of questions around actually how do you sanitize toys in a toddler group? You know, do people bring their own and they're only allowed to play with their own? Obviously those could be fuel for discussion in our breakout room in a few moments. But you touched on the communication with parents. Like you said, if parents aren't happy to come as yet, then maybe they just won't come along, because obviously we're recognising the social distancing. But just on that, in terms of communicating to parents, how have you gone about that? Because I'm sure many of us will be thinking, if we do open up again, obviously people are coming at this COVID world from all different angles of anxieties or not. How have you found the communicating to parents or carers or whoever, in a sense of kind of reinstalling that sense of trust in the things, you know, the guidelines aspects that you've put in place that worked, what would your top tips on that be?
Okay. Yeah, very much to start with, people were extremely scared to come back to something like soft play. It's all they see is the old traditional sort of dirty soft plays from the past that people kind of remember, sticky floors, etc. I mean, our industry's moved on a lot. We've had to, but yeah, we had a bit of reluctance to start. It was, numbers were quite low, but as I say, we're very much our capacities are greatly down. So our capacities are down to 40%. Once people have physically seen our environment now with socially distanced tables, our tables are over 2 meters apart. We run at around about 40% of what we were previously running at. So our capacity for the whole building is 1 person per 100 square foot, which, if you can imagine, is quite a lot of space for each person. But that is what our government guidelines say. I mean, we basically, we've done it through word of mouth, through social media is our sort of be all and end all. So through social media, we've had so many positive. We've had 1 negative review since we've reopened, which was to do with wearing masks on the actual play frame, which is a grey area because the government say that it's a strangulation risk rather than a COVID risk. So that's the only complaint we've had from anybody. Otherwise, we've had 100% positive social media. Everyone's felt safe. It's a very safe environment. It's, as I say, we're so on the cleaning. We have to be. And yeah, mask wearing, etc., is compulsory unless you have a reason not to. But yeah, no, and we're finding now people are coming back. Like this morning, I can hear out there we're nearly full, so we're full to our 40% capacity. So people are coming back, particularly people with younger children, are coming back. But I do think there are a lot of people with the younger children who are coming back have got older siblings who are at school. There's not possibly so many. There's maybe a slight reluctance for sort of first-time parents with 1 child to come back at the moment. Those with school children are a little bit more relaxed because there's so many comings and goings in the household. So, but yeah, we're getting there. And as I say, it's mostly through sort of social media, etc. It's built the confidence of people.
By the sounds of it, it might have been a slowly at first, like you said, but then it's positive word of mouth is helpful, isn't it? And
yeah, absolutely. It's got to the point now where we're full on most of our, particularly weekend sessions and things. So we're full on all those sessions. Everything now we do is pre-booked, and so people like, although I don't like it, but people like the fact that it's a much quieter environment now. It's not much good for our business at the moment because we can't do parties, we can't do groups of more than 6, etc. That's a bit of a minefield as well, but I'm not sure what your legislation is saying, but I think it's important if you can socially distance those adults and your space is big enough to do that, then it will work. I'd say as well, people not to be too worried about it, not to get too het up. We're really worried about it, and I think we've found it's an easier process than we thought, and people will return and people will feel safe. As I say, people here feel very safe at the moment, staff and customers as well. So yeah, I'd say be positive about it. Know where you're going. Just think in your mind. Don't get het up by too many guidelines, too many risk assessment. A guideline is a guideline. If you can risk assess your way around it, if it's something that's too onerous, but you've got a better method. So, for instance, if someone says, "Oh, you have to have an air extraction system," and you say, "Well, I'm going to open a door," it's in some ways it's almost as good on a small scale. So yeah, don't get too het up by guidelines. You can risk assess it out. I don't know what involvement environmental health would have in your sort of situation. Possibly not. And they're so busy at the moment they won't visit anybody. But they are quite good for guidance. Maybe a phone call to someone like environmental health. They've been superb in East Cambridgeshire. So yeah. Okay.
Thank you so much, Adam. Yeah, hopefully for those listening on the call, I hope some of that experience has been really useful. Adam, so much appreciate your time. Thanks for that and the encouragement to give it a go, not be overwhelmed by the guidelines. That's great. Thanks, Adam. I'm going to move. Sorry,
Rachel, if anyone wants to feedback anything through you can come back to me. Any of the group, if they want to ask any questions about cleaning, clean materials, anything like that. It's such a big thing. But if they want to feed it back through you, you can always come back to me and feed it back to them.
Brilliant, will do. Thank you very much, Adam. Yeah, on that, thanks, take care. Yeah, if anyone has got any questions that Adam could help with, do directly email them to Steph, and then Steph or Rachel or myself can field those on. So thank you. Danny, I'm going to come to you if that's okay. Danny works with us at the EA. Maybe you can introduce yourself, Danny, but it'd be really helpful from you off the back of hearing some of those really practical guidelines. Give us the bigger picture. Where are we at in terms of what the government is saying to churches in this realm of opening up, not opening, and so on? How does the land lie at the moment?
Thank you, Rachel. Yes, so my role at the Evangelical Alliance is as Head of Public Policy, and over the last few months I've had a lot of interaction with government departments and churches, liaising on what can be done, what should be done, what can't be done, pushing back against some of the government guidance, but also trying to interpret that and help churches interact. I'm going to say a little bit in a moment about where I think we could be next week, because everything's going to change again. And this is one of the points of absolute nightmare here. What you prepare one week is different next week. So it's very difficult in this context. I'm expecting us to be in a different framework from Monday, or it'll be announced on Monday. That's what's expected. But at the moment, you may well have encountered a bit of a Bermuda Triangle when it comes to toddler groups in government guidance. Because if you start working through the guidance, you start off saying, okay, what guidance applies here? And you think, okay, is it an out-of-school setting? Is that what applies? And you read through all of that. And then you come across a section of that that says, if you're dealing with under fives, go and look at the early years guidance. So you go and look at the early years guidance. And then you look at that and it says, if you're dealing with a registered childcare Ofsted inspector thing, this applies. If it's an unregistered community activity, it doesn't apply. Look at the out of schools guidance. So you're there. This is the triangle of gap that you're left with. So neither of those pieces of advice and guidelines strictly apply to community groups for under fives. So you then have to do your best to work out what does apply and how it applies. There are more than one way to approach this. Because there's not strict guidelines that apply to these groups, you then have to work out what does. So one way of looking at it is to view it as a community activity. And therefore, you can run that as in a COVID secure venue. You then have to run it according to other activity and hobby groups that would be run in COVID secure venues. What's crucial there is that you restrict people attending to groups of 6. You can have more than 6 people in the venue, but you have to restrict interaction into groups of 6 people. So that's one option. The other option is that it is run as a support group. And if you look at the Church of England advice, that's what they suggest. I think that's one good way of approaching this. It's not the only way, but it's a good way of approaching it. That it is viewed as a support group. So you can then have groups of 15 who can socially interact within that group. And that group of 15 doesn't include the leader. So in some ways, that's the easiest approach to say, right, we can have 15 people, parents and children, because it's classed as this, they can interact together. You are still encouraged to have social distancing between different households, but I would very much follow what Adam said and not overly worry about social distancing for the children. And yes, 15 does include the children. So it's 15 parents and children, but not leaders. So I wouldn't overly worry about the children interacting, but try and ensure how it's set out does help the adults socially distance. And then just a couple of practical things if you're going down that on toys. If you're only running a weekly toddler group, the easiest thing to do is to have a set of toys for each household group that are then put in a bag. That grouping plays with the toys, they're then put back in a bag, and then next week they can be taken out again and used by that family or another family, and it's fine. If you've got over 72 hours between activities, you don't need to worry about cleaning. If you're running multiple sessions within a week, day after day, then you do have to worry about cleaning. But if it's going to be over 72 hours, then that is different. I'm going to come on to different risk areas in a moment, because that is what's complicating this at the moment. And the other thing to mention on legalities is QR codes and NHS track and trace. We would strongly encourage all groups to do this. Depending on where you meet, it may or may not be legally required. So if you meet in a community centre or a local authority owned centre, it is legally required that you display the NHS track and trace QR code and collect data. If you meet in a church building, we would just strongly encourage that you do that. There's a bit of ambiguity in the law, and I think I would just be on the safe side and display the code around that. So where are we at in terms of different local areas? At the moment, if you are in an area of local lockdown with no household mixing, you can still have support group activities for up to 15 people. Places of worship are still able to open, but you are not allowed to mingle outside your household group when you go to a place of worship. So you're able to run as a support group in an area of local lockdown. My anticipation is that on Monday, on Monday, the government will announce a 3-tier system. It's been quite heavily trailed in the press this week, that will have the national level, then an amber level, which is probably equivalent to what is the local lockdowns, and then a red level, which is a more stringent area of restriction. In that more stringent area of restriction, what I would expect is that social clubs and community centres and hobby groups will be required to close and not run. Whether or not that means that support groups are required to stop operating, I don't know. It is likely that places of worship will continue to be allowed to open. So it's just where that line falls in terms of the government's restrictions. I think it's highly likely places of worship will be able to stay open for acts of religious worship. I think it's likely in the highest risk areas that community activities and community clubs will be required to stop meeting. It's where that sits in between that we're not sure about. That probably covers most of what I wanted to say initially. Let me just see. If you're a support group, do we need a program, or is it enough to consider the parents' need to meet as a support group? If the parents need to meet, that's a support group. I think there is, again, some ambiguity as to how far you can stretch the definition of a support group. There is definitely, new parents are explicitly stated in the guidelines as one of the support group activities. So anything around that would apply. And I think you can include that support group activity for parents of toddlers as well. Serving of refreshments and wearing of face masks. Adults should wear face masks indoors, and over 11s, I believe, is the restriction. Refreshments, honestly, I would stay away from it. There are ways to serve refreshments in a COVID compliant way, but it's an absolute nightmare. You basically have to operate as a cafe or a restaurant and do everything that involves. So I think I'd encourage people to bring their own stuff. It's just easier that way.
Brilliant. Danny, thank you so much. Hopefully that's been helpful for many of you. Danny, hugely helpful, I think, just to have somebody who can gather all of that information in your brain and actually make it real for us in our context. Again, if you've got any particular questions that you'd really like Danny to, sorry, I'm volunteering you, Danny, but do email Steph or Rachel or myself, and we could field those back to Danny. But thanks so much for that. Just in the interest of time, where we're going just in the last sort of little section is we're going to give you a moment in just a second to go into breakout rooms to discuss what does this look like for you, to contextualize it a little bit from all that you've heard. Thank you for listening. There's a lot of information in that last little section from Phil and Adam and Danny too, but hopefully it's been helpful. We'll go into groups in a second, but just to whet your appetite, if you need to leave us at any point, please do. But after that, we're just going to hear from Sarah, who's going to tell us an creative idea about doing a Christingle in a bag, and look at some Christmas resources, because of course Christmas is a whole other domain where families around us need to know about the truth of the gospel at Christmas time, but that of course looks very different again. So that's what's coming, but without further ado, why don't we go back into breakout rooms just for 5 minutes this time.
Hello, welcome back everyone. We are sorry we are so out of time. We hope you can stay with us just for a few more valuable minutes. We totally understand if you've had to go, but we would love to keep you together for a few more minutes. I hope you've had lots of illustrations and stories. What we're going to do is, if you've had a great example, like we had in our group, someone's going to run a walk through nativity with where you can do a nativity. It's all different like spaces that children book to walk through with their parents. So you can maintain the social distancing and the isolation, but they go through, if you like, meeting and they'll get some live animals. So you'll go and meet the sheep and the shepherds. You'll go and meet Mary and Joseph. But that is a really good way of doing the Christmas story, but people can book when they're coming. They book a slot. They stay socially distanced, but that sounds like a cracker to me. And Mary is running a church service for the under fives in a small group. And they are... they have, like, you come as a family, you're kept almost in, you sit in your small area, you can almost block them in with chairs. The craft activity is there in the middle of it, so there's something to keep the children occupied. The service is very short, so like 20-30 minutes max. They have songs from the front, but action ones. They don't sing, but they get the children to do the actions. And so they're managing to do like a messy church style, but very short, minimal, songs from the front, actions. And I thought that sounded like a really good idea, because you've got your parents keeping the children entertained with the pack that is in front of them as well. So that sounds like a really good idea of getting things open. We're going to introduce Sarah now from Carlisle Diocese, who is there. Well, she works for their Going God for All category, looks at fresh expressions, but has a real passionate heart for the under fives. And Sarah, I'd love to introduce you to talk to us about Christingle in a bag.
Thank you. Yeah, well, we've expanded it since I last spoke, Rachel, so it's growing out of the bag already. But basically, yeah, so my part-time role, I cover the whole of Cumbria, so that's mostly the Lake District and all the fringes. We work ecumenically, so there's all different churches involved with local level and regional level stuff. And normally we would have a Why Not Come to Church at Christmas type campaign aimed at families and children on local radio, posted mail shots, that sort of thing. Obviously this year that's probably not going to be practical. And when we were sort of chatting about it, we realised that often either a nativity or a Christingle service would be the main draw in most of our village and small town churches. And again, the numbers that they were getting and already running, say, 2 services in some parish churches in larger towns, for example, just wouldn't be practical. So we're actually teaming up with our local BBC Radio Cumbria. We're going to have up to a half hour, we've not quite negotiated with them, slot, and have a live radio Christingle all age thing going on the radio. And in conjunction with that, we're going to be encouraging our local church communities to put together Christingle in a bag stuff, deliver them out to all their contacts or through the local schools, depending on the context of what stage of lockdown we're in at the time. Now, obviously, the National Children's Society, you can access all of that stuff, including the bags. Really, the only thing your church would need to add would be an orange into those bags, as far as I can tell, and do a bit of snipping of tape and stuff to have all the stuff. There's stuff on there about getting the donations for the Children's Society and all of that. You know, you could make it as big or as small as you want. In terms of the toddler group I'm involved with, just personally and locally, I'll be making sure they all get a bag, just generate the enthusiasm on our social media stuff. But the main idea is that anyone and everyone of all ages in the whole of our area will be able to join in at the same time, a Christingle short service, and we're going to encourage everybody within that to be on their doorstep with something lit or electronic torch if you're really worried about the candle stuff, and sing, because obviously you can actually sing on your doorstep as well, and join in. So we're currently just sort of carefully selecting 2 or 3 carols. We're going to produce centrally like a little booklet and leave some of that blank for local content, but then email that out to sort of anyone who has the luxury of a parish administrator or that level of admin, so that people can have it printed off, but also download the basics from a central website as well. So you've got the words you can sing, but we're going to try and pick those carols that children, you know, even children who maybe go to nursery, preschool stuff, know some without having to be able to read as well. And we're going to stick something in a bit like they could decorate the windows of the houses as well, just so that you know that other people are taking part, but also challenge people from within our church families and church communities to really make that happen on their, just in their row. So I live on a row 4 on a main road, but actually, you know, I could go around, communicate at a safe distance with my neighbours. You know, we're trying this, why not join us? I might even produce some glühwein, and I don't like mince pies, so it'll be Stollen, and I'll go totally German Christmas, whatever. But, you know, give people a few ideas. So one of our church communities is already trialling like a sort of eye orienteering thing with QR codes, because they're quite popular at the minute. So there's this online website, I'll put things in the comments later for you, that you can download as an app if you're really energetic. He happens to work for a forestry commission because we're in the Lake District, and so you can't go orienteering as normal, but he's adapting this so that at a distance you can do a trail around your churchyard with little bits. The beauty of QR codes is it links you to something you can create on a web page, on a website that gives you more information. So we're sort of hoping to generate some of that in some of our smaller communities where that's possible, recognising that for some people we won't be able to gather at church. Does that give you a flavour?
It's great, Sarah. Really, really good. And we will make sure that you get links to all of that, so that if you want to join in, you can join in where you are as well. So Sarah, I'm sure, will be happy to send us links. You'll be happy for other people to do this around the country, won't you, Sarah?
Please, yeah. And you know what, our local radio station, they're going to even do some of the marketing and the branding for us. So it's not like this is from the church thing. It's a real community, encourage your little neighbourhood and whatever. So, you know, don't feel like, oh, it's just beyond us. I mean, you can tune into any local radio station, can't you, online as well. So if you wish to join us in Cumbria, go for it.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
That is so good. And we're getting some of you got some creative ideas coming through, like in the chat, which is just brilliant, so inspirational. So if you've got a creative idea, will you send it to us, and we will make sure that we get all those creative ideas together and we send them out, whatever you're doing, whether it's in the park, if it's on the areas, we want to hear those things, so that all of us can benefit from each other. And if you've got a link to where you've done it, if you've got a link to where, say, something you've done on Facebook that people can find, we just want to resource everybody to have those ideas and to find them, because you've got some great creativity. From Hope, what we're doing is, I don't know if any of you saw our little animation last year, our Happy Lands animation. We're going to use that again this year, because why not? Because it was so super cute. And so that will be out again for you. Happy Lands animation does the Christmas story with those cute little Happy Land characters. Here it comes, a little tiny clip of it. And then we're creating a Happy Lands book. This year, the children's book really will have the Happy Lands characters right the way throughout. So we've taken stills from the animation and we've created a Happy Lands Christmas storybook with them all in. There you are. You can see a page with the angel and the shepherds and the sheep. It's just so cute. So you can get those from our website, from our Hope Together shop. They're 30p if you're just buying one, but if you're buying in bulk, they're cheaper than that. So that means whatever you're doing, if you want to give a Christmas story away with all the Happy Lands characters in it, you can. And if you want to drop that animation into anything you're doing, just take it and drop it in and use it. And We're in contact. The Entertainer's Toy Store again is giving that Happy Land book out to every customer in their shops again this Christmas. So they're giving away the Christmas story to anyone who shops in their shops. They're also taking our Christmas magazines. The Christmas magazine is, again, super cheap. It's just 10p a copy. So if you want something for the adults to read, if you're giving out the nativity book for the adults, you could just give away our Hope at Christmas magazine. It's got some great stories in it. And it also flags up the wellbeing course that we're involved with, that we're hoping local churches will either run in person or online from January, which is good for adults. The wellbeing course is for adults, not children, but if people want to join in. And so that's also flagged up in the Hope at Christmas magazine. So do get those if you're looking at what to give people this Christmas. We've also done Hope at Uncertain Times. That was a little giveaway booklet, 20p, that really helps people understand. Thank you, Rachel's waving it. Helps people understand why Christians have got hope in this time. And so again, if you're looking for something for the adults that you want to give out, it's a beautifully crafted book. It's only 20p, and you can give that to people. And if you've got a little bit more money in your budget, we've had amazing stories of what's happened with our Mark's Gospel, where people have picked that up and actually read the life of Jesus for the first time because it looks contemporary. And Rachel, you've bought some of those, haven't you?
I have, yeah. I can't express enough, I think, having seen these or got a hold of a copy here in my hand of the Mark's Gospel, it's an A5 sort of size, it's matted, it's just very cool and contemporary. What I've done personally, as Rachel said, they're only £1 each. I decided a couple of weeks ago, contacted Hope. I've bought just 10 copies of this to start with, but I'm actually just going to give them as added extra Christmas presents to friends, non-Christian friends. So I think it's got real integrity. It's just lovely. And if you get a hold of a copy, I'm sure you'd like it. So again, talking about, your friends, your family, but our toddler groups as well, why not actually with either of these at 30p or only £1 a copy, would a church support, for example, buying a bulk load of them that actually we could take round to our local families and toddler groups to help just spread the good news of Christmas. In light of Boris saying Boris is going to save Christmas or Christmas is cancelled, this gives us a lot to say. Actually, Jesus is still alive. The message of Christmas is still as real as it ever has been. Our families need to hear that, don't they? So, yeah.
We're in conversations with Carlisle because they're thinking, we've been having ideas about who's going to, all singing Christmas carols. So tying it in with your Chris Dingle thing, a big Christmas carol sing-along is obvious for a community, for all different communities and all different ages. So I know that Carlisle Cathedral is some conversation we're going to have with some of the people there about doing a massive Christmas sing-along, Christmas carol sing-along. So we'll make sure we get some information out about that as well. Rachel, over to you about survey.
Yes, just the very last thing we'd love to flag up to you is as part of our work at the Evangelical Alliance, we're currently, for the next only 3 days, we've got a survey that's out. It's called the Change in Church Survey. We'd just love to ask you that as we send it out on email to you as follow-up to this seminar, if you've got 10 minutes or so today or over the weekend, it'd be really helpful to us to just ask if you might fill in this survey. It's basically asking you as individuals, as church leaders, to help fuel our information around what has lockdown been like for you? What is this new phase like? Are we starting up groups? What are the needs of church leaders? What are the needs that you're seeing in your communities with groups and so on? All of that information will help us really fuel how best we can support church leaders, churches, groups, toddler groups, youth ministry as we move forward. So we'll send you the link. If anyone could grab a cuppa and grab 10 minutes to fill that in, we'd be really grateful.
Thank you. I think that's a wrap. Only to say we've recorded this all, haven't we, Rachel? And so you can get the bits you want again. So if you want to watch it again, you can watch it again. And if you want someone else to watch it who wasn't here, or if you want to find a piece in it, you'll be able to find, oh, I know that person said something, but I can't remember what it was. And we would love you, therefore, please send in to us your amazing ideas, any links that will help anybody, anything that you're doing that would help somebody else. We want to hear it, and then we'll just send it out, because it was just hearing all that creative wisdom in the room. And we are looking to, we'll get back together again if you're happy to do that. So we'll do that again, maybe in the new year, once we've got through Christmas, which we are going to celebrate. We are going to celebrate Christmas. We are going to play, and so we can then hear of how we all did that and how we contact people and look forward to what we're going to do next. So we will get together again as Zoom. It's a wonderful way of connecting right across the country, and we'll send send you some day forward. I'm going to pray to close us out. Lord, thank you for this time we spent together. We ask that you will just keep us inspired by the power of your Spirit. Lord, particularly as we come into Christmas, would you help us to have inspirational ideas that we can celebrate the birth of Jesus country, even if we're in lockdown. Thank you for the ideas that are coming. Pray that you'll give us inspiration, passion and energy for the next piece of this season, that the church will carry on shining such a bright light. In Jesus' mighty name, amen.
Amen. Amen. Thank you all so much for joining us. Enjoy the rest of your day. God bless you in all that you're about. We hope to see you again in the new year. Until then, have a great Christmas, October, November. We'll see you again soon. God bless. Thanks for your time.